back. We got a legend. When the legends join us on a Monday, we must celebrate, brother. Jonathan Hutton joins us. Outkick 360, one of the great shows. I listen every day. The game day, here's what's going to happen,
okay.
All right? The Outkick game day with you guys is going to take off. Things don't happen just immediately. It takes a minute, but I can see traction, man. Looked like you guys had a blast at the SEC championship
look,
game.
We ended the right way with Outkick the tailgate, Dan. In Atlanta, which is the mecca for SEC football fans. I refer to it as the Alabama reunion because they go there every year. Everybody knows where they're going to meet up pregame. They don't text or call each other. They're just there every December. Alabama books their trip. And they met at Stats. There were a ton of Georgia fans there too. And yeah, we took the crew, set up everything. Farmfolio was awesome. And we rocked and rolled, man. It was a great crowd at Stats.
It was, and I watched, and I thought you guys just made it fun. And I like when those things are informative. You guys always do a great job, but I'm being serious here. I basically was at my brakes went out in Elon, North Carolina, so I sat there at a brake shop for 2.5 hours, and all I did was watch you guys. And I just thought it was a blast. Top four, you're good with it? The Final Four here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, let me say this. Yes, I'm good with it because, it's chalk. It's what we expected if Alabama won. I ended the tailgate show by saying this, though. We needed Alabama to beat Georgia to save the college football playoff. Because if not for Bama winning, think about the semifinal matchups we would have. Now, I'm not saying that an upset could not happen because we've seen nothing but upsets throughout the college football season. It's been a really fun college season. But I'll compare it to the Cinderellas in the college basketball tournament. We love to see upsets. We don't like to see the Cinderellas reach the Final Four. And we know that based on the national television ratings when they're there. We like the Blue Bloods playing for the title. That's just how we are as a society, like it or not. And I want to see the best football games. I don't want to see the Cinderellas there just because they've never been there before. And I'm not just saying this about Cincinnati. I would have said this about Oklahoma State, who I didn't think was better than Alabama, even if Alabama lost to Georgia. I think we have better matchups now. And by Alabama winning, I was saying we're at least going to have Michigan take on Georgia or Alabama based on how they seed these teams. And that's a matchup I want to see.
See, I've always said this, Jonathan. I've always said, we love to see Mercer beat Duke. But in the next round, we want to see Duke play Kansas, not Mercer play Kansas.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? That's exactly right. No, I totally get that.
But now, now that Cincy's there, I'm all in on Cincy. I want to see them do it because they've done it all year. They've done their part. They deserve to be there. But Alabama being there now, I'm thrilled that we get to see Alabama against Cincinnati because now Cincinnati gets to prove all their doubters wrong.
How big is Mechie being out?
Big. There's a 1-2 punch, and with Mechie and Williams, you've got a downfield threat. You have the intermediate and an extension of their run game as well. But look, Bryce Young is the engine to their offense. He has taken it up a notch over the last couple of weeks, and what he did to Georgia's secondary is what we thought we would see from C.J. Stroud if Ohio State got to the playoff and faced off against Georgia. So. Alabama is still perfectly capable, but yeah, that's a big blow. That was one of their go-to players.
When I was at the Tennessee game, Mechie was really good. I just thought he was, I don't know if he's the best player on the field, but he was really good when they needed him. He seemed to be the comfort guy. All right, Saban believes this rat poison stuff. He's not letting this go, right?
Look, so I think Saban has actually been speaking the truth all season long. About the rat poison and all that. Now, maybe the cliches are a bit much, but Alabama on Saturday played like a team who had to win. They put together their most complete performance of the season. Georgia played like a team who wanted to win, but mentally there is a difference in facing elimination versus knowing you're going to the college football playoff regardless of what happens. Credit to Alabama. Credit to Saban and Bill O'Brien and Bryce Young. The game plan, the execution, flawless. They attacked Georgia vertically. They did that early and often. They attacked them in the middle early and often. They went at Georgia like nobody else has done that all season, and they hit some big offensive plays. But going back to Saban, Dan, Bama was the underdog for the first time in nearly 100 games, and they've only lost by double digits 3 times over the last decade. And mostly everyone picked them to lose and picked them to lose by double digits, picked Georgia to cover. Saban, for the first time in a while, did not have to preach about how great their opponent is going into the game. You know, he did that against A&M. He won at his coach's show against Texas A&M that week that we were going down there. And I made fun of Saban for having to build this game up like it was some massive performance. And then A&M went out and beat them. And he did it again against LSU. He did it against Auburn. This isn't the best Bama team we've ever seen. They've come close to losing multiple games. Florida, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, all those teams came close to beating them, but they could not do it. And A&M needed 2 non-offensive touchdowns to beat Bama. Georgia got Alabama playing at their best, and I think it's because Georgia had Alabama's full attention. And Saban has weathered the storm without the best Bama team that he's ever coached. But it's why instead of the beat Bama pins that all these other teams wear on their jerseys or on their shirts going to the games, we need to circulate the Outkick slogan of Bet Bama, because you bet Bama when they're plus 205 on the money line, because you're never going to get that again.
Hey, look, I said forever in college football, Urban Meyer and the points is a lock, and I said it on this show. Hey, man, Saban and the points, are you kidding me? Hey, last thing about Bama, and then I want to move on to Harbaugh and that, but this was supposed to be the closest Heisman Trophy, race. I mean, you got, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. It may be a landslide after Saturday. That thing, I don't know, man. I think Bryce Young solidified it easy with that performance.
I think
what
so.
Do you think?
I mean, he was poised. He was calm, cool, and collected. They came out throwing. And again, he's had the arm strength. He throws the football effortless. There's a handful of quarterbacks in college football that can do that and make every throw. He's one of them. And you can tell Saban loves the guy. There have been moments throughout the season that you see those two together, and you can tell that he is undoubtedly the go-to leader of that offense. They're not going through a running back. They're going through Bryce Young. And the country have seen him on full display. That's the advantage that they have. It's not their fault. They're just excellent, and they deserve to be on national TV. And the national exposure, and with the majority of the voters tuned into an SEC game, he's likely going to win in a landslide now. And that's not to say there aren't other contenders, but Bryce Young right now is at the top of the list.
All right, Harbaugh gets the monkey off his back. What are your thoughts on Michigan?
He does, but sometimes, I'm listening to some satellite radio yesterday, driving around Nashville, and they're talking about Harbaugh winning and getting some pressure off. I think sometimes, though, we forget how hard it is to win. Even with the coaches we don't like. I don't like Harbaugh.
Right.
And so the perception of that is he's a choker, he's overpaid, all this and that. Michigan was 12-13 in the 2 seasons prior to Harbaugh taking over, and he won 10 games 3 times in his first 4 seasons. Getting beyond that level of 10 games, it takes time, and the time is now for the Wolverines. And it's why we think Penn State made the right call by buying in with James Franklin. They haven't been great. In fact, their record is similar to what Michigan's was prior to Harbaugh being there with Franklin right now. But they believe that they're headed there. And it's just taken Michigan time. If you watch Michigan play, they have some dudes. They have legit NFL talent. Hutchinson is elite. Haskins is a very good running back. Ajabo is a special player. Harbaugh has elevated the talent level inside the program to A level, and he's winning with a good but not great quarterback. And now they've beaten Penn State, Ohio State, and Iowa in 3 of the last 5 weeks. And then don't forget they had a 2-score lead against Michigan State before Kenneth Walker had his Heisman performance of the season that everyone thought was going to have him win in a landslide. Michigan is a good team. They gave up that lead to Michigan State. And then after that game, they've done nothing but prove it on their way to the playoff. They're a deserving number 2.
I'm glad to hear you say that because winning is so hard. I don't give a damn at that level. It is so hard. And he's done a good job, but he just grades people the wrong way. And, of course, at Michigan, you got to beat Ohio State. The one thing that I will say about Michigan, and if you think about what they've done, I don't know what people feel about Big Ten football, but they beat the living hell physically out of Ohio State. They beat the living hell physically out of Iowa. And Iowa at one point in this year was the number 2 team in the country. You know what I mean? They beat the living hell physically out of 2 teams that pride themselves on being physical. That, I think, is dangerous as you move into a matchup for Georgia, I think. I think that's dangerous for Georgia.
How do you overcome – and this is not a shot against McNamara. He's a good college quarterback. But, again, he's just a good, not great guy. He's not Bryce Young. How do you overcome that? If you can't hit the big play, well, you break the other team's will, and that's what they did against Ohio State. You and I chatted about that the Monday after the game. It was amazing. It felt like Ohio State didn't want any with Michigan at some parts of that game, and that's what Michigan has done to all their opponents recently.
I know it, and it's been impressive. All right, going back to the Heisman, is Bryce Young's, I think, going to win it. Kenny Pickett at least goes to New York, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, yes, he should be there. And you mentioned Young's winning it. He deserves it after what he did. Let me put this in perspective with Young first. 3 college quarterbacks finished with 40 or more passing touchdowns this season, and Bryce Young had the fewest interceptions of those 3. He needs one more touchdown to break the school's all-time record in passing touchdowns for a season, and he's roughly 200 yards away from the yardage record as well. And he's done that behind an offensive line that allowed him to be sacked, not all on the line, some on him, I'm sure. He was sacked 33 times. Mac Jones was sacked 13 times last year. But all that being said, I'm just comparing Pickett to Young here. Pickett is one of the other 2 quarterbacks I'm referring to in that group. He has 4,000 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, and he is the heart and soul of the Pittsburgh team. And I love the kid because I love any kid that when you look up and you see his name and you're like, man, it feels like this guy has been there for a decade. Like I want more of that. And maybe he has, maybe next year is his 10th year at Pitt if he's finally turning pro. He absolutely deserves to be a finalist. He set tons of records at Pitt. And had they not slipped up against Miami, it's possible Pitt makes the playoffs because of Kenny Pickett. He is a special talent.
Speaking of Miami, a couple coaching things. Venables going over to Oklahoma. Cristobal leaving Oregon, possibly. I mean, it's kind of still up in the air, and going to Miami. I got to tell you, with Nike money and Nike influence, Oregon to Miami seems like a step down. What are your thoughts on it?
I think so, too, except for the fact that this is about as of a Miami dude as you can find to lead your program. So you pony up and do it. Like Cristobal was born in Miami. By the way, Manny Diaz is the son of the Miami mayor, or what? Yeah, so
that's what I'm saying.
So they can go from one to the other here. Cristobal was born in Miami. He played for the Hurricanes. He was previously the head coach of Florida International, which is located right there. And Miami's going to pony up and not just pay him. They're about to pay two other locations here. They're going to play the pocketbook of Diaz, which is like an $8 million buyout, which is chump change. They're willing to give Cristobal somewhere around $8.5 million a year based on what I was reading over the weekend. And then they're going to pay the buyout at Oregon on top of that. It's a bizarre storyline because Diaz is still in place and you've got Cristobal who is wavering one or the other and leveraging one against the other. But ultimately, when that happens, to me, the heart is in the home. And it sounds like he wants to go there. I think it's a home run hire for Miami because of the ties and because how he can recruit not just that state, but that area. He did it everywhere. Every stop he was, from Alabama to anywhere he was across college football there. I think he can win either way in the ACC or in the Pac-12. But Miami is calling. And that's probably one of just a very small group of programs right now he would bolt to Oregon for.
All right, I'm going to follow up with two things. Number one, I don't think coaches being paid all this money is a bad look for college football. I just don't. I mean, I think I know there are 6 suites underneath the top deck at Bryant-Denny Stadium that, because of Nick Saban, go for $5 million a year with a 2-year commitment. So you can do the math on that. I think coaches that do really well at those places are worth the money. But the bad look here is having Manny Diaz still being the coach while you're doing all this too. I think that is a horrendous thing. All right. And the second thing, easier to make the college football playoff at Miami in the ACC or at Oregon in the Pac-12?
Right now it's Oregon. But, I mean, Oregon goes on the road and beats Ohio State. I mean, you want to talk about Harbaugh getting the monkey off his back. Oregon got that done this year too, and the committee loved them for it. You know, Oregon could have waltzed into the playoff. They'd be number 1 right now,
No doubt.
if not for the way they played. Even if they lost to Stanford, and the committee still loved them because they beat Ohio State. And then they slipped up again. So it's easier to do it at Oregon. The rebuild is going to be at Miami, but we know what Miami can be. We've seen it there. And ultimately it's the challenge of all that. I'll say this though, going back to the money play, Saban is underpaid right now. It's hard. Right. It's hard though. Yes. And Withrow has mentioned this quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and I completely agree with him. It's hard to find a big group of Nick Sabans in college football. It is baffling to me that Missouri, and this is no shot at Eli Drinkwitz, although I hate the gimmick that he did with the lightsaber and all that. I think that's childish. It's baffling to me that Missouri pays more for their college football coach than what the Tennessee Titans are paying Mike Vrabel. Like that's where it's stupid money. And the zero non-compete keeps loyalty out of it. There are no program guys like Bob Stoops want program guys. Did Oklahoma put a non-compete in Brent Venables' contract? Probably not, because no one has them in college football, and guys will leave if you don't pony up and pay.
My brother, who is an attorney, contracts, acquisitions, told me when I got out of coaching, you will never see a contract in your life again that's a coaching contract. They're so ridiculous. They're so idiotic. You don't think going into whatever you want to go into, you're ever going to see a contract like that. Hey, look, I'm with you. And I would say this, the coach at Indiana who made about $5 million this year, you get about literally, and I'm being literal here, about 20,000 paid people in there. He's over. There's different levels of it, but I'm with you on Saban. Let me go to some hot takes here in the NFL and get your take. Pittsburgh versus Baltimore is the best rivalry in the NFL.
For me, it is because it's the most intense. And like you can name a couple of others, right? But when they play, something big is at stake. It's likely for supremacy in the AFC North. It's usually for positioning in the postseason. Both teams are known for defense, which adds a larger element of physicality and nastiness to the rivalry. And the other reason that it's at the top is both teams are usually really good. You know, the Packers and the Bears are another good one, mainly for the historical significance. But when the Bears suck, it just doesn't carry that same intensity. Baltimore and Pittsburgh talk the talk, they walk the walk. From the way that they acquire players and build their organizations, to the coaches that they hire and never fire, to the general managers and the ownership. There is a consistency level that all feeds into the fact that they're also two teams that hate each other. And I crave that because we don't have enough of that in the NFL anymore. This provides that no matter who's playing for them.
Man, I taught you said it. See, that's where you're really smart. You use words really well. I just say stuff. You use words like what you said was brilliant. I'm just like, yeah, I love watching them play because they hit the hell out of each other.
But
you're a genius.
No, I'm not a genius. It's the only rivalry to me in the NFL where you can point that out. Like,
yeah,
no rivalry is as consistent as that one right now, even though it hasn't existed for that long.
Now, my thing used to be, oh, man, I love watching the Cowboys and the Redskins. Even though I grew up a Chicago Bear fan, the Packers were just boring to me.
Yeah.
All right. I watched this yesterday. Now, I'm going to say the modern era of football, let's just say 1990.
Okay.
All right. The Houston Texans are the worst team in the history of modern NFL football.
They're an offensive failure. I mean, I don't know if they're the worst team. Like, I have no idea statistically where they are on this.
Right.
But they're the worst we've seen in a while, because when they lose, Dan, they lose really, really bad. I mean, they are pathetic. When they lose, they look like they're the worst modern era team in the history. And they are horrible in offense. They entered the Colts game. I follow John McClain on Twitter at McClain_on_NFL. I throw a couple more underscores at the end just for the hell of it, because it's funny. But he's covered the league for nearly 50 years. And this guy, McClain, who's on 360 every Tuesday, he mocks this team from the press box in a way that is just hilarious on social media. And he's throwing out all these stats before the game even kicks off yesterday. They entered the game last in scoring, dead last in total yards. They are last in passing yards, and they're last in point differential. And then he said something like, at least they're better when they run the football. They rank 31st. I mean, they are horrid. They scored. They've scored less points than Detroit and Jacksonville. Those two teams are outscoring them, and they have scored 10 or fewer points. I knew this stat going into the Titans game, and it still holds because I've seen what happened since they beat the Titans. They have scored 10 or fewer points in half of their games. So, I mean, it's just abysmal. And it is, I mean, they're going to get the number one pick, and that's about the only victory that these fans are going to have, because it has been a really bad season. And look, it all started when Deshaun Watson, prior to all these allegations, he signed a massive contract extension in September of 2020. And then by the end of December, wanted out. It starts up top in that organization. But when the franchise quarterback demands a trade, and then you have the turmoil of what everything has been going on with them, you knew they were heading in this direction.
There's no doubt. They lead the league in 3 and outs. Of course, they're going to lead the league in most times punting. I was listening as I was driving to the. I mean, it was like, and you just mentioned the stuff they lead the league in, the bad stuff they lead the league in, made me think: is this, all right? If Antonio Brown and Mike Edwards did forge or have fake COVID vaccination cards, they should be suspended for the remainder of the year.
It feels like it because of where we are in the season. I mean, they should be.
They put people at risk, is what people are telling me. I don't know if that's true. Believe what you want, but lying.
I don't know. I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter where you come down on the vaccine versus unvaccinated deal with this. Let me explain. They should be punished. 3 games doesn't seem like enough when you consider just the stupidity of how they've handled this, because they were caught, then they lied to these investigators. And then they said, you know what, we're going to take a lighter sentence. We're going to take a lighter suspension because we're not going to appeal. Or at least that's what they did for Brown. The problem is the NFL looks like the NCAA in a way, because they would not have even known about this if not for a former chef and then solid reporting and digging by Rick Stroud of the Tampa Tribune, who tied these stories together of Brown and Edwards and reported Brown's alibi and how it didn't stack up and add up when the vaccine card said he was vaccinated 80 miles away from Tampa. And he said he went alone. And then Edwards' vaccine card has the same date in the same location. If not for the media, the NFL just goes as business as usual. And that's what the NCAA does in these investigations. And then Yahoo Sports breaks things wide open for them. It seems like they went lighter on the suspension, given the fact that Brown agreed he wouldn't appeal. But look, I don't think here's kind of the other side of this. I don't think the NFL is going to dig and look into the other players who make up about 20% of the players who were vaccinated. There's 20% of players that were vaccinated outside of a team facility or on site that a team supplied or the NFL supplied. And that's what happened here with Brown and Edwards. So if you're going to find these fake cards, which, by the way, how did they not have a policy in place for this? to begin with. That's maybe a different conversation. But to me, this is obvious and was going to happen, and probably happens across the league and other teams. And that's why Arians wants the NFL to go digging and snooping around for others. But the other players, here's going back to the original point, the other players who actually got vaccinated in order to not have the strict rules enforced should be upset with this. That's why they should be punished. It's because, I got vaccinated so I could have access to the press box across the country and access to Radio Row and other places. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that access. And NFL employees, from the general manager to the coaching staff to the janitorial service, if they didn't get the shot, they would not have a job. If they did this, they would be fired. Antonio Brown is suspended for 3 weeks. So that's why I go back to the punishment should be harsher, because if you look at it from any other angle, the punishment would be extremely harsh, and one I didn't agree with. And it seems like he's skating. And the other thing too, he's got a bum ankle. He would have missed these games anyway. So, it just seems like it's just kind of okay, sweep this under the rug. Let's move forward.
I agree with that. I agree. Again, you're really good with words. I want to like Cyrano de Bergerac it. I want to open my mouth and talk with your words coming out. Because
no, you don't. Trust me. No, you don't.
No, I do. Washington football team or the Miami Dolphins, one of the two will make the playoffs. Both are hot.
Yeah, I think one of them. I think Washington, yes, because a very average team in the NFC can be the final wild card. I'm trying to think of the exact records here, but what? Okay,
6-6 and 6-7 is basically.
Yeah, and
hot,
I think Washington is a scrappy team. There's nothing flashy about them. I've thought this year, over the last couple of weeks watching them, Ron Rivera's teams are what Dan Campbell was talking about at the podium when he took over the Detroit job. He said he wanted those ankle biters, like that's Washington. I don't think they're very good, but I think they can make the playoffs. The AFC is a different story because right now, 12 of the 16 teams are 500 or better, and Miami is not one of those yet. The Dolphins are the bigger surprise because of the way they started the season, and that's why they're not at 500 yet. They started really slow out of the gate, and they have no margin for error. But now they've won, 5 straight games now. They've allowed 55 points over those 5 games, and they go into a bye week here. And in 2 weeks, they have the Jets. That'll get them to 7-7. And then they have a stretch of New Orleans, Tennessee, and then the Patriots. And if you compare them to Indy, who they're going to be competing against for that spot after the bye, they also have a tough stretch for the Colts. New England, trip to Arizona, then they play the Raiders, I believe, in that order. And then I think they finish up against Jacksonville. I'm guessing there because the Titans finish up against Houston. The league is about to get really good, though, Dan, because it's been a fascinating season, and the extra playoff spot has opened up some sprints to the finish line that we otherwise wouldn't see setting up right now. And let me add this. There are 2 quarterbacks for these 2 teams that you're talking about, Washington and Miami. If they make the playoffs, we're not going to hear the Deshaun Watson to Miami trade talk nearly as much because Tua is going to be their guy. He over this stretch, he's been really, really good. He's completing over 80% of his passes. And then there's Taylor Heineke at Washington, who his teams play hard around him. He's very difficult to describe, but he's not losing them games. He could stick around and be a number 1 as well, depending on where they're drafting and all this. It's a making the playoffs could mean a lot for both of those dudes.
Tua's leading the league in completion percentage last 6 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, the dude is playing ball. All right, last thing. You mentioned a bye. Huge advantage to have a bye this late in the season over earlier in the season.
I generally would say yes, because you can gear up for the postseason. It's the war of attrition, though, in the league, because sometimes the earlier bye can be beneficial for self-evaluation and a chance to get healthy. The Titans, for instance, have a bye. They're coming off their bye. They could have used a bye a month ago instead of this week, just to stop the bleeding, because they've had over 85 players participate in a game this season. The late bye.
They make mistakes like kids in the school.
Sorry. Sorry.
Hello.
The late buy, you are what you are, Dan, and it's tough to adjust at that point with the self-evaluation. But if you take care of your business and you're in striking distance for the postseason, late buy is great because you regroup, and then whenever you return to work on that following Monday, you shut the door behind you, and it's time for the long stretch of 2 months where you hope you make your run through January.
You know what? One of the things about this time, is there ever a time of year like this where you just have so much to freaking talk about? Honest to God, this is the greatest time for sports talk radio.
I mean, it's right now. It's then it's March Madness, right? Because you've got every with the tournament, and then you have the NFL draft gearing up. But right now is glorious with the college football playoff, all the bowl games, and then imagine what this is going to be like when they expand to 12 teams. Me either.
I can't wait. I know. Give me more. Give me more. Honestly, I'm a fat ass 59-year-old guy. I want appointment TV, man. I want, hey, what do you got on the show today?
You know what? We're going to kick back and discuss all the big storylines from our time in Atlanta, watching Bama beat up Georgia, what it means, and then look around the NFL because there are some fascinating teams and some puzzling situations. What's going on in Cincinnati, for instance, is crazy. Meanwhile, you've got the Chiefs, who look like the best team in football right now because no one else in the AFC is willing to play consistent football. So it's going to be a fun show. A lot like yours, Dan. We're going to show up. We will entertain. We will inform. And we will make sure that we give our listeners and viewing audience a chance to escape, kick back and talk some sports.
You're the best,
So are you, Dan.
You're the best. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you very much, my friend.